Hi Huskies! I hope you'll join me for a fun drawing this week. And I don't know if you've noticed what I've noticed, but it seems like there's a lot more bugs that are starting to come out. So insects are actually going to be the inspiration for this drawing. And I'm wondering if you've ever considered what the world must look like from the perspective of an insect. You know, compared to humans, bugs are really little, so I think everything must look enormous from a bug's perspective. So we're going to use that as kind of the subject matter for this fun drawing, and I thought we might add to it adding some food. So I'll show you here my example of what I came up with, and I've got a few ants here on my drawing. I also added an ice cream cone to make it look like these little ants are carrying this ice cream cone off. And do you see what I mean about how this looks so big? If I'm a bug over here watching all my other, ant buddies, that ice cream cone looks huge. So I want to show you first of all how to draw the ice cream cone. You certainly don't have to do the ice cream cone. You might come up with some other idea for a food object. And then I'm going to show you how to draw the ant. And you can see I added several here. What's really important is you're going to need to make sure that your ants don't look too big or your food doesn't look too small. My ants are actually bigger than what a real ant would be, but if I went too small, you wouldn't be able to see quite as much detail. So I had to make them a little bit bigger, but I didn't want to make them too big. So let me get you started here by grabbing my example sheet of my ice cream cone. Now you could do it just like your paper holding vertical and do it like you normally would, draw it if you were looking at one. I drew mine sideways because I also added, a little drip to make it look like the ice cream was melting a little bit. So I started out here with my really nice big sideways V, and then what I want to do is I want to start adding the details of the ice cream. And you can see I've got some real big curves here, but I've also got some little ones, because when you start doing that, scooping that ice cream out with an ice cream scoop, you have some spots that look really big and round like the ice cream scoop, and then sometimes there are these other little parts that are sort of bunchy from the crumbly almost looking. Now you could keep this just as is. If you do want to add that little drip, you can just kind of curve this down here and make it look like that ice cream is sort of melting and dripping off like that. I added some detail on mine that maybe looked like some chips. You could add some other kind of details to make it look like your favorite ice cream. And then the only other thing I added was my little crisscross pattern here on the cone to make it look a little bit more interesting and a little bit more like an ice cream cone. So once I have that done, my ice cream cone would be all set, okay? So that's as much as you would do, other than adding some details here to the ice cream. So let me grab my ant, because I want to show you actually how simple it is to draw this little guy. I am going to make him bigger. You'll see he's going to look much bigger than the ants that are in the example I showed you. And as I was looking at the different photographs of the ants online, I noticed that most of them have three main parts to their bodies. And you might find some that have some other little parts, but we're just going to focus on these three main parts. They also have 6 legs, so we'll add that after we get these parts on here. So what I did is I actually started with the center part, and that was about 3 fingers wide. It's kind of like a sideways 0. So I started with that. And then if you'll see here the head that sits right on it, it kind of looks like an upside down, I don't know, maybe an upside down raindrop, or it kind of reminds me of a watermelon seed. I also thought it reminded me of maybe even a balloon that's blown up. See that? So it's a little bit pointy here at the bottom and sort of round at the top. This back section of the body is also very round, but it's a little bit flatter here on the bottom. And I am going to make sure that they're really touching here. So I'm going to give this really nice big curve, kind of like the letter C. And then I'm just going to let it curve on up here to meet the center part of the body. And then I'm ready to start adding the legs. Now, these legs are actually really bendy like human legs, and they almost are like knees and ankles like this, and so that's kind of fun. Then we would probably want to add a couple little tiny ones that look like they're coming on the other side of the ant's body. The tricky part here, the one thing, is getting those little arms that are in the front to look like they're holding up the piece of food. So this is kind of like making almost like a a Z shape backwards. See how I did that? It kind of goes up and down and back. So it kind of looks like a Z in reverse. And then I would just add another little line here. It kind of looks like a backward 7 to look like the other arm that's on the other side of the body. And if I have those pointed up there, it's going to look like whatever food I put here is holding it up, which is exactly what I did here on my example of my ice cream cone. You can see there's some little hands that are holding up that ice cream cone. Now my other little ants aren't doing that. They're just kind of walking along and going with them wherever they're headed with their food. So I hope that you will have some fun exploring with this, trying out these little ant creatures and some fun food items. I added some grass blades in there just to finish it off. I think it would look super cool colored. If you have some markers or crayons, you might have some fun adding some color to the whole thing, but it's still fun even if it's just drawn in pencil or pen. So I hope that you'll give it a try. Have some fun exploring with maybe even your favorite food. It's up to you, but most importantly, I want you to have fun. So keep those pictures coming. I'd love to see what you end up with. You can email them to my school email. But have a good time and good luck.